Welcome to The Business on Radio Verulam, the voice of your local business community.
Well, hello, it's Sunday the 9th of December, it's 8 p.m. and welcome to The Business. I'm Trevor Merriden with the show that's essential listening for the West Herts business community. Now, would you like all your food and drink to be locally produced and delivered this Christmas? Well, of course you would. Well, two local businessmen have launched a new home delivery service for the area's best home food and drink. We'll be talking to one of them, Kirit Khumar of St Albans Delivered, about this new venture. Now, meet our man from the motor trade, Ian Wooding-Jones of Redbourne Auto Solutions. He's in our studio as our interview guest this week, telling us about business and the sector. In our Let's Talk Business panel session, we'll be looking at the rise of the community co-op and asking the question, can small business really compete with big business? And then there's Celia, Heley and Nick Kitchener with their top tips, best and worst decisions for business. And of course, our diary planner, a roundup of the week ahead. But first, what's in the business news? As ever, I'm with my partners in crime, Roma Bhowmick and Vicky Scott. I got one name. I got one name right, and then I got the other name wrong. Roma Bhowmick and Vicky Scott. Oh, this is live radio, folks. But Roma, what's in the news for you?
Well, my first story takes us on from the last time, and it's the ongoing issue of companies taking advantage of tax loopholes. We've heard time and time again, the issues have been almost ethical and moral ones around how much tax organisations are paying, and we've heard enough, I think, about the Starbucks issue. Interestingly, there's been a bit of a backlash against the policymakers, i.e. the government, suggesting that they're actually responsible for leaks in the tax system and for making them worse as a result of their constant attempts to try and resolve the UK deficit issues and encourage trade by using too many tax breaks. Anne Redston, who is very well respected senior tax expert and visiting professor of law at King's College London, recently suggested that the government should plug leaks in the bath, as she calls them, that they have to stop creating new weaknesses in the system and that it's only too easy for businesses to exploit them. And this includes suggestions that there shouldn't be as many tax breaks as there could be for even the small businesses. The one we talked about last time was the people paying themselves off payroll, the off payroll contracts paying through their companies. And then also this shares for benefits scheme. So I don't know what you two think about that little gem there.
Vicky?
Well, it's such a big issue, isn't it? And, you know, anything to do with tax is so terribly sort of controversial. And it seems that, you know, if somebody wins, somebody else loses.
Yeah.
But whichever way you look at it, you know, if the laws are there, then you know, they're there and everybody's going to find ways to sort of, you know, get tax mitigation sorted out. And it's, the jobs of accountants to do that and unfortunately, if the law doesn't adapt and doesn't correct the loopholes, then it will continue happening.
I've noticed a sort of a new almost like there's two types of law. There's a legal law and there's a moral law sort of going on here, and I think it's a bit of an odd sort of situation. You also see it in things like the minimum wage as well, where there's a legal minimum wage and now the living wage.
Yes.
You know, the living wage for those people in London especially, but in other places as well, where you know there's just this kind of two-tier sort of thing going on about what can you actually get away with and what should you morally do. And I don't know, is this a good thing or a bad thing, or is this just confusing the hell out of everybody, really?
I think it does get confusing, and I think we still are facing this issue that small business and big business are being lumped in the same pot, as it were. And whether we like it or not, I think larger organisations can afford to play around a bit with tax. I think the small businessman does get hit. You know, I've got my own business, and I know that I'd like to be in a situation where I'm not paying as much tax as I seem to be paying. I'm sure we're all experiencing that.
I'd like to afford to be able to pay PricewaterhouseCoopers to do a job for me to help me get. It's very difficult, and I think you're right, Trevor. There seems to be two layers and two levels, and it doesn't, it just doesn't work for everybody, whichever route you take.
No.
Small business can't afford to very often take the moral high ground.
No.
Big business probably can, but doesn't. So
No.
it's a difficult one.
There you go. Anyway, over to you, Vicky.
Well, I am Vicky Scott. I don't know who Vicky Stewart is. I can't
She's
even
someone
pronounce her
else.
name.
Yeah. She's coming in later.
I hope not. I hope I'm not being usurped. Anyway, I've had a really interesting week. Once again, I was caught up in the whole finance for small to medium-sized business enterprise. And I was delighted to hear that according to Baker Tilly's rather ominously named SME Business Distress Monitor, it's a great name.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing at that. It's people in distress, that's not funny. Yeah.
It's the stress.
But the monitor's saying that sales and revenues are holding up very well. And in fact, in many sectors, they're growing year on year. So that's great. But if you look a little more closely, you can also see that when you look at profitability, many entrepreneurs are looking at dwindling profit margins. So clearly there's a real temptation here for businesses to chase sales at whatever cost and stretch oneself. That then has a real knock-on effect on cash flow and sustainability. And the data is showing that as many as 24% of small to medium-sized enterprises will not have enough funds to pay short-term debts in the coming year, which is pretty scary stuff. What's the answer? Well, the ICAEW, that's the Institute of Chartered Accountants England and Wales Corporate Finance Facility, have produced a really good summary of best practice guidelines for SME finance. You can check it out on their website, www.icaew.com. But just a quick tip from me, because it's something that I work with clients on a lot, and I know Roma does too. But what's really, really important is that first you know your real margins, including the cost of your time. It's really important to understand your market and your position within that market regarding the prices you charge, and be ready to justify those prices. And if asked for reductions, aim to hold price and add value. Never just drop price because someone asks you to. You've got to really find out why they want it to be cheaper. And if you can't justify your price, then you're probably going to find yourself in a situation where you've got cash flow problems coming up too.
Yeah, my father-in-law, who has run a very successful business, number of them sort of during his time, he always said to me, spend 10% of your time on cash flow and financial things, even if you find it very dreary and you don't want to do it, and you're not sure whether to send that invoice in or not, whether it's politically quite right to just send it in. And because you've just really, the cash flow is just so important.
It's critical.
Yeah.
One of the first things I do when I'm working with businesses on advice is to go in and we look at their cash flow and also their understanding of how much do they owe, how much is owed to them, looking at things like bad debt. It's all absolutely critical, and it's great that you brought it up actually, Vicky, because I think, again, this issue of pricing, how to price, people often look at their gross margins, so they think that they don't look at all the costs, they don't look at net margin, and that they're not necessarily pricing themselves relevant to what they genuinely need to bring in, not just to cover their costs but actually to make a bit of money, especially if they're looking at growing. Again, the preference when you're growing is not to borrow money, isn't it? It's to try and grow organically, and the only way to do that is to have some loose cash lying around, as it were.
Yes.
I think it's quite often what I see as well is that people don't know where they're making their most money. So they don't actually, always push the right products in the right places. I remember working with an interior design company, and they were very excited by the big jobs that they got, sort of organising the refurbs of hotels. But actually, in terms of hard cash, they were making more money on the soft furnishings at every single stage, whether it's curtains or cushions or lampshades or chandeliers. All of that was real easy cash flow. The big jobs, much, much harder, much, much longer, much less margin.
Okay, right. I've seen something. Also, first question though, Ross Kemp. Is that an EastEnders actor? I just wanted to make sure of that, because my sort of thing was in the news this week. Local entrepreneur called Ross Kemp, not the EastEnders actor, but another one. Who was in the news, sort of invited into Sandringham School, where he used to study, to talk about design and technology students. And he's 25, and he's given the opportunity to compete for a stake in a £1 million investment. It was a BBC Three's programme, Be Your Own Boss. And he had the chance to pitch his idea, which was to which would be used by lifeguards to rescue people who get into trouble in the water. And Richard Branson, amongst others, was very impressed. So he goes back to the school, Sandringham, and and got involved in conversations. And it just struck me that there's so many business people who, with understandably, always say, well, the young people these days, they don't come out of school with enough qualifications, or they're not of the right stuff. They don't understand what it's like to work in the business world. And I actually think that sometimes employers, being a very pragmatic bunch, really ought to be getting into schools a lot more often. And I think it's one thing to say the education system's not right, and I think there's a certain sort of a truth in that. But I think businesses need to do their bit as well. And I don't know what you guys thought about that.
Well, you've got things like Dragon's Apprentice, and you've got Young Enterprise, and they encourage business owners to mentor the pupils that are going through that programme. But actually, at all levels within a secondary school, there's no reason why businesses shouldn't get more involved. You've been involved with schemes like that, haven't you, Vicky?
Yeah, no, and it's a really fantastic experience. It's a great opportunity, and it's a really interesting and worthwhile thing to do. And a number of the schools are very good at it. I think that people underestimate the value that actual people who have been in the workplace can add to the school experience as well. I think teachers are fantastic, but a lot of teachers are only ever in education. And actually, when you're looking at what you want to do at university, or when you're looking at what you want to do as an apprentice, or to go out into the wide and real world, it's a really useful thing to do, to actually talk to people who have been in it and have done it. And it's very, very satisfying as a business person who's had experience to share some of that.
Yeah, I know that, as you know, I lecture part-time at the University of Hertfordshire Business School, and what we try and do is bring in some of the key pillars of the business community to talk to the students for exactly the reasons that you're saying, Vicky, so that they understand this whole concept of business, running a business, entrepreneurship. And by the way, I've realised it's not the Ross Kemp we think it is.
No.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
I was duped.
Yeah.
I think that I went into, I hope I'm going to get the right school, I think it's the John Law School in Harpenden, who've got a fantastic media centre. And I worked in media for 25 years, so to actually go along and talk to the people there about newspapers and magazines, radio and everything else, as somebody that had worked in the industry as opposed to somebody that was training them, it was a really useful exercise and great fun too.
Also, kids can put things in a sort of reality that you might feel slightly uncomfortable with. I used to work in publishing, and I worked with a publisher who told me one day that she went home and her daughter asked her, Mummy, what do you do? And he said, I'm a publisher. What does a publisher do? Does a publisher, write the words? No. Does a publisher sort of sell the magazine? No. Does the publisher, edit? Does the publisher sort of, go and tell other people? No. Well, what does a publisher do, Mummy? She actually told this story on her leaving do, because I think she decided that she wanted to go and do something else with life. Sometimes I think just going and talking to somebody who's completely removed from actually can give as much to the person in going in giving a presentation in a school or wherever as anyone else. Well, that's all enough. That's enough about what we think about these things. We'd like to know what you think. Ladies, do you have the Twitter address handy there?
It's at RV the Business.
A little rustle of pages there, maybe. Roma. RV the Business, or the email is thebusiness@radioverulam.com. And we'll be able to sort of pick up your views, but especially Twitter. We love Twitter. We had a little Twitter flurry last week, which is lovely when you start it. We like Twitter. We like Twitter flurries. Right, but we're going to be...
But not to forget that you can actually phone us too. So
yes,
if you want to join in the debate, the studio number is 01727 839 926. That's 01727 839 926, and if we can remember which buttons to press, then you could actually be on air tonight and join in the panel discussion.
Absolutely, yes. We're a master of technology here, so we will be able to get you on air. Notice, listeners, that the 926 is 92.6, okay? 92.6 FM, our frequency is clever, eh? And so we're going to be right back after these messages.
Inspired talk from Radio Verulam. You better listen, or we'll be after you.
Can I call you Rose for the rest of the show?
Yeah, if you want to.
That'll be all right. You're all right with that.
Yeah, people call me Rosie.
Right, let's get you a new name as well. And Nardi's unusual. What's that from?
Nardi is a new name. I mean, I do consider it my real name. So the whole name is Shanti Anadi, which is peace without beginning.
Peace without beginning, blimey. Yeah, if you're listening in, we're a bunch of weirdos here.
and happy being weird.
And
Definitely.
being strange.
Inspire Talk on Radio Verulam. Wednesday evenings, 8 to 10 on 92.6 FM.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
People living with cancer or life-threatening illness can often feel isolated, confused and alone. Grove House in Waverley Road, St Albans leads the way in offering free specialist care and support to patients and their families affected by cancer and life-threatening illness in St Albans, Harpenden and Dacorum. To find out more about their services, or how you can become a volunteer, or make a regular donation, or leave a gift in your will, phone 01727 731 000 or visit grove-house.org.uk.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
Yes, this is The Business. Now, we want this show to be about the business community. We want to know what you think and what you can share. So we do lots of things like top tips, best and worst decisions, light bulb moments. You've heard us talking about this before. And this week, Celia Heley from the eponymous agency Design and Art Direction, we talked to her and we started by asking her what her top tips for business were. And this is what she said.
Well, I think the top tip for me, if anybody is toitering on that point at which they're thinking about setting up on their own, is to do as Nike says, and that is just to do it. Because that's what I did. I just thought, I've always something I wanted to do, and I've always thought I'd do it in a few years' time. But just do it. That's what my top tip is. Just have a go. It's like Schrodinger's cat, isn't it? You don't know until you try whether it's going to work or not.
Right, so to sort of trust your instincts and just go for it.
Have a go.
Have a go, right. And what would you say your best decision has been in business?
The best decision for me has been networking. I hadn't even heard of networking when I finished work, and I had no idea how to promote myself other than just knocking on doors and talking to people that I met. And then I discovered networking, and I've done quite a lot of that over the last year, and that has been just the best thing that I should have done. I mean, it's just worked so well for me.
Right. Have there been any particular networking groups you've joined?
I joined a couple of ladies-only groups, I think because I had never done anything like that before. I just felt a bit more secure in that environment. But I've now joined another couple of mixed groups as well.
Right, brilliant. And have you made any sort of mistakes along the way that you're prepared to share with us?
Yes, the worst thing I did, because I've come out of working in big agencies in London, I just made the assumption that everyone knew what I was talking about. So I suppose it's using jargon. So I had to learn really quickly to spell everything out really clearly, because I'm used to people knowing the difference between a layout and art, and they don't. So it evolved because of that, because I kept making that same mistake, thinking people knew what I was talking about and they didn't.
Right. And have there been, I mean, we all have moments where the penny drops, and have you got a sort of, I know the way to describe it, a eureka or a light bulb moment that you want to share with us?
I have lots of those because I'm a creative person, and when I've got the brief together and I sit down and I come up with an idea. The difference between what I do and a graphic designer does is that I start with an idea, and that's based on finding out about my client, what business, and finding their USP, their key message, and then I design around that. So it's slightly different than just doing straightforward graphic design. And so when that works, when you hit the right thing, the right wording, the right colour, the right look, and it all falls into place, that is your eureka moment every single time. And then everything around it falls into place. So even if it's just a logo that I'm doing, or if it's a campaign, including posters or a banner or something, you do get that eureka moment, and you know, because suddenly it all starts falling into place.
Okay. Celia, thanks very much. That was fantastic. And there she was. That was Celia Heley. And Vicky, we've got our interview guest with us.
We certainly have, and this week we've got our introducing Ian Wooding-Jones, who's the MD of Redbourne Auto Solutions. I asked Ian along because he recently came through a really interesting and possibly challenging time, but we'll find out about that in a minute. Just a bit of background on that. As many of you probably know, Saab Motors, almost a year ago to the week, I think it was about 18th of December 2011, as I understand it, Saab actually declared bankruptcy. So the motor dealership and the garage that Ian at the time was running suddenly had no big brand support system and possibly no immediate future. So I asked Ian to come along and to tell us about the story. So what happened next, Ian? Very, very welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me along. Very interesting story from my perspective. We went through some fairly traumatic times during the Saab story, which was a real roller coaster of are they going to survive or aren't they? And unfortunately, at the end of December, as you quite rightly say, they met their demise, and the company I work for could no longer trade, which left me without a job and with the thought of what do I do from here? I live in Redbourne, obviously a little village with 2,500 or 2,500 houses, but no hub repairer within the village itself. And the initial thought was, let's set up a Saab specialist within the Redbourne area. But that's kind of morphed, and as we've moved along, and particularly as we're trying to gain planning permission, we realised that there was a lack of repair within the hub of the village, and that actually the Redbourne residents were crying out for something more than a Saab specialist, and actually something that was much more multi-franchise. And we've again revolved from that, and we're now repairing multi-franchise motor cars and vans as well. Again, a big sort of van community within the Redbourne area, a lot of self-employed people, plumbers, electricians and so on, who need their vans sorted out within the village.
So that's extraordinary. So within a year, you've gone from being a sort of Saab support specialist for a brand that a lot of us have, which is, I've got one, and I love them. And it's morphed already into some quite different areas of business. So that's really looking at the market, looking at the immediate market, and responding to customers' needs.
Very much so.
So how did you find those people with the vans?
Well, it was a lot of local marketing, some mail drops. A lot of people within the village knew us anyway, and that gave us the opportunity to tip into things like scout fairs on the common and involvement within churches and schools, and just really sort of fitting in with the hub of the community. And people coming to us because they knew us and because they trusted us. Unfortunately, then word of mouth has then worked from there onwards, and we've had some very good reports as to what people are thinking about us and what we're doing, and that's brought more and more people to us.
That's fantastic. So, we talk a lot on this show about networking and local networking and the concept of know, like and trust. And that really has driven your business exactly where sounds as though you wanted it to go.
Massively.
But it sounds as though it's also quite successful quite early as well.
Well, we've been trading officially now since June. It took us a while to get planning permission, which was another story almost in its own. But since then, we've had over 500 unique visitors in terms of new customers, and some of those have come back more than once with different cars as well. So. Just over 100 customers a month so far. So
that's fantastic.
We're very pleased.
What do you think you're doing with your customers that is making that much difference?
I think the big thing is that we're local and convenient, and people can drop their car to us and then walk home. And a lot of the business we're getting is from Redbourne. But it's also that we are treating customers in the way we want to be treated ourselves. So if someone's got a fault on the car which will last another 6 months, we are letting the customer know, but we're not telling them it has to be done now. We're suggesting that they maybe want to come back in 6 months' time. They can have it done straight away if they want to, but they can bring it back in 6 months' time.
That's very refreshing. I have to say, I don't know very much about cars at all, but But unfortunately, the whole motor mechanics area sort of has a bit of a dodgy reputation for, that sort of old plumber thing. Goodness me, I don't know about that, or it's going to cost a fortune, or we better get it fixed now, otherwise you're going to be illegal. And I had a situation with tyres, where I went to one place and they said, you're going to be illegal within 5 minutes. But they didn't have the tyres. I went somewhere else and they said, you'd be fine for another 10,000 miles. And to actually get the feeling that there's going to be trust involved actually does take you back. It does make you sort of go back for more. It's clearly working for you guys. That's brilliant.
It appears to be doing so.
Do you think there's going to be enough business in Redbourne to keep you going, or are you planning to expand?
We want to expand. Certainly, I think there is enough business in Redbourne itself, but equally we are surrounded by a lot of other small villages who aren't served by dealerships or by garages at the moment. And obviously we're not too far away from either Harpenden or Hemel Hempstead or St Albans. We have courtesy cars, so people can drop the car in and take a car away. So yes, there's still many areas we can look at.
Ian, it's a wonderful story. I mean, it's never nice when things happen like the place where you're working closes down and people get dispersed, and your colleagues and things like that. But looking back on it now, are you actually glad it happened? Is glad the right word in this situation?
It didn't feel like that way at the time, but I have to say, looking back on it now, it spurred me on to do what I've always wanted to do. It's very difficult to walk away from an employed position to start your own business, but being put in a position where the employer was being taken away from me, it just spurred me into doing, I say, the thing I've always wanted to do.
Right. Well, did you have sort of kind of conversations? You must have had conversations with loved ones, in terms of, shall I take this giant plunge at the moment? I mean, they must have been quite tricky.
Very much so. I mean, my wife is much more cautious than I am, but she's very much behind the project. She actually works within the garage as well. Whereas I've had some maybe harebrained ideas over the years which she said, no, please don't. With this one, she's been very much behind me because she can feel in the same way as I can that it will be a success.
Yeah.
There must have been a heck of a lot of support and probably rules and guidelines from Saab in terms of ads and marketing and general systems and structure. What have you taken away from Saab, and what have you left very firmly over in Scandinavia?
Well, obviously we don't have a specific relationship with Saab now because we're not attached but to them. But we obviously have the skills and knowledge that we've picked up over the years. Which gives us the ability to be able to market in the right way and to get to the right people.
Was there anything that you're really, really happy to have left behind?
It's nice to be able to have your own business without having to talk to or rely upon other people to do things for you. I know that if I need something sorting, it's down to me to sort it, whereas maybe in the old regime, with using Saab as an example, you'd have to maybe go through some hurdles to get things sorted.
All right. So just one sort of last question. If there's anything that you could do differently in the last year, what do you think it would be?
Planning permission was the biggest thing for me, and we started our planning permission journey in January, where we were told quite specifically that it was going to be a rubber stamp just to get ourselves in a different class to be able to repair cars, and it took us through till the end of May to actually get that permission through. And I think maybe I would have pushed just a bit harder with the local council to get that sorted, and actually have meetings with them rather than put things on paper that maybe got misinterpreted, emails that maybe got misinterpreted. So yes, I think maybe if we pushed a bit harder and maybe if the council had been a bit more open to what we were saying, we maybe would have started our business a little sooner than we did.
Right.
So many people say, I wish I'd done it sooner. I mean, I know I've said that when I started my business. And I mean, do you feel like you couldn't go back to doing it any other way now?
Absolutely. It's a way of life now.
Right. Okay. Well, you're talking to the converted here.
Yeah, preaching definitely to the converted
to this evening. So, thanks very much, Ian. Ian, we need you to stay on in terms of you'll be part of our panel. Are you happy to be with us for another few minutes? It'd be great to have you. And thanks very much for so far. We've got a few messages now, and then we'll come back and we'll be talking food and drink.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
The Abbey line connects St Albans Abbey train station at the bottom of Holywell Hill with Watford Junction and was one of the UK's first official community railways.
The community rail concept was designed to help create a more sustainable future, to reduce the cost of running the line without compromising safety or service, and to involve local people more closely in the development of their railway.
For 150 years, the Abbey line has been taking people between St Albans and the centre of Watford and beyond.
It continues to do this, and all for at most £6.60 return, and in only 16 minutes.
For more information, visit their website, which is abbeyline.org.uk.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
If you want to get in touch with the business on Radio Verulam, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
Well, would you like to tuck into your Christmas Day food and drink knowing that all the stuff you'd bought had come from local producers? Well, we all want to support our local community in some way if we can, but sometimes we struggle to get the time to track down that once monthly stall at the farmers market or the brewery over in Tring. Well, two St Albans businessmen have launched a new home delivery service, and it's bringing together the best of local independent food and drink. Matt Bigg, well known to the show, is one of them, and another one is Kirit Khumar, who I spoke to a little earlier, and I started by asking him how his delivery service came about.
Basically, I knew Matt from a previous acquaintance, and we are both fairly passionate about food and local food and St Albans and the farmers market and things like that, and we found that there were quite a lot of people that did some very, very good produce, but we found that people weren't able to access those products on a regular basis, so hence we thought of ways of getting that product and those quality items to the people of St Albans, hence St Albans Delivered, and that's the start of it, and together the two of us started figuring out ways of some sort of a business model, and we decided that a web-based project with some partners, people like the Pudding Stop, people like Heaven is a Cupcake, would add value to that, and so we worked with some of these guys, had a couple of meetings, and hence the concept was born, and then that's where we're at now.
Right. What's the difference? I understand it's a web-based directory. I mean, what is it that this is doing? What's the unique feature? Is it because it's local?
Well, it's not a web-based directory. It's actually a physical entity in the sense that we will purchase the goods off all of our partners, and we will then deliver them on their behalf in a fresh, sort of safe manner to the residents of St Albans and the surrounding areas. So if somebody wants, a delicious cupcake, or somebody wants organically reared meats from the locality in Hertfordshire, then we will source it and we will deliver it on behalf of our partners to the people that require it. So it's not directory based in the sense that we don't have a list of and in this list of people there's a select few, maybe at the moment there's a handful of up to about 10 people, and we then make sure that the products that we do source complement each other. So there's some real value in terms of they're either the meats are grown locally or the food is cooked locally, and there's a passion from these individuals as well.
Right, you're making me hungry already, and thirsty. And I mean, so you want, your emphasis is on quality. So you have a sort of preferred suppliers. So you wouldn't have, two of the same sort of supplier or partner.
Well, if there was a reason to have two of the same, then we would. But initially, we've got one of everything. So we've got a cake supplier, we've got a pudding supplier, we've got a meat supplier, we've got a drink supplier. So that's how we've done it. So in essence, we started with a little hamper concept, just as a taster for the Christmas period this year, and with that we've got a little bit of everything in there, so somebody can sample what I would say is the great and good of St Albans from a food perspective, and then moving on into next year we will then expand that portfolio to have maybe a larger range, more jams, more chutneys, more cakes, more puddings, more drinks. For example, we've got Tring Brewery, so we've only got one brewery, but we've picked a selection of their very best and something that has a relevance to the locality, so yeah.
Right, and if you are a supplier listening to this, I mean, what would you do to, would you get in contact with your good selves? How could somebody do that?
Get hold of me or Matt via our St Albans Delivered website.
Yeah.
It's info@stalbans.com if somebody wants to drop us an email. But basically, if they visit the website, there's a contact page there. They can send us, a brief summary of what they're about and what they're doing locally, and why there's some sort of a link with St Albans or Harpenden or the surrounding areas, and then we will then look at that, have a chat with them, and then move it forward from there.
And does it cost them to be on the site?
No, it doesn't. It's a free service. We're not charging any of the partners to be a part of us. All we will do is buy off them and then deliver that product on their behalf to the local areas. Obviously, there's a discussion that's gone on to make it viable for us as a commercial aspect. But at the end of the day, we want to promote them as much as we want to promote our service. So it's a case of working together to get the optimum goods out to the marketplace.
Terrific. And I understand the website, which was www.stalbansdelivered.co.uk, has just gone live. Now, and obviously, we've got Christmas coming up. Was that timing deliberate, or did it just sort of work out that way?
It wasn't. I mean, ideally, we wanted to start a little bit earlier, but what we've done is we've used Christmas as a launch pad, because we thought that by putting a group of the partners' products together, then we could offer something like a hamper or something like a shopping basket that people wouldn't have to really think about too much. And we've done all the hard work in terms of researching the very best and putting them into a little hamper, and we've got those available online. We've only got a limited selection, but there's 5 or 6 what we feel are very good items, i.e. hampers, that are available. That will give you a taster of what's available, and then next year, when St Albans Delivered sort of fully launches with a whole portfolio of products, you'll be able to again maybe buy those products again, or have a selection of other products that you can then either buy as a hamper or individually.
Oh, my tummy is rumbling after all that. Food and drink, Christmas coming, the geese are getting fat, and all that sort of stuff. Crikey, that sounds rather good, actually. I mean, I've made this assumption that we all like to order locally. I mean, am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know about that.
I think so. The farmers' market was on today, actually.
I know.
I always like to go along and see what's being sold. And they were selling turkeys. You could put in your order for a local turkey and get nice fresh produce.
I think
it's
so.
Good.
I think actually talking of putting in your order, this is Roma's slot. She's already put in an order with Ian Wooding Jones, who's returned with
pounced on him.
Who's returned for his for interested in the car for the new year, I think. But Roma, it's your part of the show. Panel discussion. Take it away.
It is. Well, every week we debate the big business issues. Firstly, I want to welcome back Ian Wooding Jones of Redbourne Auto Solutions. So welcome back, Ian. It's very interesting listening to how your business has grown and developed, and how you turned a potential crisis situation into a real success. So fantastic. And our own Vicky Scott, or Stuart, or whatever she likes to be known as tonight, who's decided to join us on the panel tonight for a bit of a change, which would be very nice. Welcome back, Vicky.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first topic of discussion I've entitled Keeping It Local at Christmas, the Rise of the Community Co-op. Well, really what we're talking about is the increase in the number of community or social enterprises that are starting up, and I think very much reflective of what's going on in the economy. Have you ever considered that a small share in a local pub, independent bookshop or green energy project could be the perfect Christmas present? Since we're getting so close to Christmas? Well, a recent piece of research looked at how this kind of cooperative arrangement's booming. In Brighton, there was a local pub which had been threatened with closure, where locals were able to buy shares for as little as £10 and a maximum of £20,000, all in their efforts to raise £200,000 to get it up and running. It will be run by locals too. In Devon, there's the independent bookshop, where the locals have raised £44,000 to reopen a local gem in their fight to encourage the community to come offline with the likes of Amazon and enjoy the feel of real book shopping. It also helps that I think they've got some famous local authors, including Michael McPurgo, and they've been able to hold a number of events with the backing of those famous authors, and the list goes on. So, are we seeing a shift in the way we do business in the community? Are there more social enterprises emerging than perhaps new commercial businesses? And would you consider buying into a community enterprise? Ian, would you like to buy a share in a community pub or local shop?
It sounds like a fantastic idea.
Uh-huh.
If it moves the community forward and keeps everyone rowing in the same direction, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. I mean, Vicky, what do you think?
I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. It's sort of genius, and it's one of those ones that's pretty obvious when you think about it. I mean, Ian was telling us earlier about it being sort of local, know, like and trusts the people that are close to you. So why wouldn't you want to sort of get together and make sure that your local high street, your local village, your local businesses can keep up and running and keep supporting what the local village wants. I think one of the issues is always trying to make the the accountancy element of it work, so everybody knows what they're getting into, knows what their expectations are, that it doesn't turn into a boardroom that's got 500 people, because that absolutely wouldn't work. But companies manage shareholders all the time, so there's no reason why, with a bit of nous and a bit of know-how, it couldn't be a fantastic way of keeping things buzzing and building those community links, which in many villages are sort of falling by the wayside. You don't have as much contact with your neighbours, you don't have as much contact with the people that are across the other side of the common, and this is exactly the sort of thing that brings communities together. So I think it's brilliant, and I'm not sure I could afford £20,000 for a share in a pub for my husband's Christmas present, but I'm sure he'd like it if I could.
Have you come across any projects like this, Ian? Have you heard of any?
I've heard of some, but not locally. I've heard of some out of area, which have appeared to work very well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard more of projects out of area. In fact, actually, what we'd really like to do is hear from anyone that's involved with starting, running a community project, a social enterprise. You heard it earlier. You can contact us by tweeting on @RVTheBusiness or email us on thebusiness@radioverulam.com. And we'd like to hear about whether or not you've had experience. I think it's fascinating. I think it's very sad when we hear the number of small pubs, independent pubs, local shops that are closing because of the pressure of the big supermarkets. And it kind of seems like we're all getting on board, aren't we, with trying to help save these organisations. And particularly where you've got local produce as well. I think a lot of the smaller shops, for instance, they're trying to use local produce to also support the community in that way, which I think is a great idea. So maybe we could start one up in Redbourne.
Absolutely.
If there isn't one already.
I mean, one sort of slight fly in the ointment is that all this thing about paying out for shares in this or shares in that.
Yeah.
It sounds like a nice, kind of slightly romantic local thing to do, but really, I mean, these are straitened times. I mean, can we all afford? Can any of us sort of afford it? I mean, sorry to be the sort of the doom and gloom guy in all this, but actually, are we? Is it a romantic idea, or has it got some real substance to it, do we think?
I don't know. I mean, interestingly, of course, it's not just a matter of paying for a share in the business or the organisation. It's also then getting involved in running it and having an input that way. So people will tend to give their time to make it work. Yeah. I suppose if you've got the time and you are passionate, then you can make it work. And they're looking at turning over not just revenue but profit. So they will run as
I work, as I think I mentioned before, I work with some venture capitalists in London, and of course they do this sort of thing on a grand scale. But there's absolutely no reason why, with the right sort of combination of skills on that board and the right sort of financial accountants that can actually make sure that they can see what the business plan can look like and then can prove to the shareholders that there is an opportunity if everything goes according to plan, obviously, that they can turn it over and turn it into a profit. There are, we talked earlier, but there are tax mitigation opportunities here if it all works out properly. And quite often what I see is, particularly older retired people or people who are going part time or people who are just wanting to do things differently, there's a hell of a lot of experience out there that's not being used, that could be used, and a lot of those people are people who live in villages that want those villages to thrive. So actually it's a question of pulling the right skills together, pulling a great business plan together, recognising that there is risk involved, but making sure that the people that can contribute are contributing with the knowledge of that risk, but the belief that it'll be beneficial in the long run.
Okay, well, I secretly agree with you anyway.
I just wanted to be controversial.
I just thought I'd stir it up a bit, really.
It's Christmas. Could be positive.
Absolutely. Anyway, we're going to come back with the second question in our heated debate after.
saying that, don't you? Heated debate.
I love saying that. Straight after these messages.
Join Simon Carver on Fridays from 6:30 p.m. for The Film Guide. We look at the UK cinema box office top 10, a selection of the new cinema releases and the best of the week's films on free-to-air TV. That's Fridays from 6:30 p.m. on West Hart's Drive Time with Danny Smith, exclusively on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM. Radio Verulam Community Partners.
St Albans Symphony Orchestra has been giving concerts for over 75 years, delivering top-quality live music in an affordable and accessible way. They play the greatest classical works as well as popular light music with all the excitement of a full-scale symphony orchestra. They also subsidise every child's ticket. It costs only £1 for a child to attend any of the concerts. To learn more, visit their website saso.org.uk.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
And welcome back. I'm here with Ian Wooding-Jones of Redbourne Auto Solutions and my colleagues Vicky and Trevor, and we're going on to our next topic for discussion. So the next topic is, how can small business compete with bigger businesses? One of the biggest current challenges for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, is competing with more established brands. As a consumer, are you attracted to the individuality of small businesses or the familiarity of big, well-known brands? SME owners will probably find themselves pondering this very question and hoping that customers in their sector will opt for the former, of course. So how are small businesses dealing with competition from other more established companies with bigger budgets and more resources? Surprisingly well, according to research by software company Sage, which interviewed 1,350 UK businesses about their abilities to compete with the big players in their industry. Although the study revealed that the majority of respondents, 69% of them, felt that the economic climate makes it harder for small businesses and startups to compete with larger brands, when it came to their own company, 2/3 of those respondents say they feel confident about their chances of competing with businesses bigger than their own. So, first of all, actually we'll start with Ian. What do you think, Ian? Competing with the big boys, or is it all about the little business?
Well, I guess our story is very much along these lines, because we are competing with main dealers, who are the bigger boys. But because of the fact we're a smaller business, our overheads are less, and therefore our labour rates are lower. But also we're not as confined with the processes that maybe the larger dealerships are running with. It allows us to be a bit more flexible with the customer, and therefore we're finding a number of customers are leaving main dealers that they may have used for a number of years to come and join us already. So yes, a very live example that people will use the smaller business because they prefer the way that we treat them.
So you think customer service is absolutely key then?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
The customer service is the link to us all. If you can't produce good customer service, you don't get the feedback, you don't get the referrals, and you don't move forward.
Yeah.
But if you the opposite to that, obviously, if you're producing the right customer service, the right levels of customer service, people will talk about it and keep coming back for more. And as I say, the larger dealers don't necessarily have the ability to be able to offer the customer service as personally as we can.
So what would you do that's different, that's markedly different to a main dealership?
I think it's all sorts of things. I think it's knowing the customer, it's recognising them and remembering them. It's knowing who we're expecting in the day, so that it doesn't come as a complete surprise. Certainly in the industry that I'm in, there's a lot of main dealers who use call centres, so you're not actually booking your car in with the person you'll see on the day. And all those things added together allow us to give a much better customer service than some are able to.
And how do you keep making sure you're doing the right thing? How do you know you're still doing the right thing?
I think because we're in a fairly small village, and because, as I said before, we're fairly well known as the owners of the business. We would be told very quickly if we weren't, and we're certainly enjoying at the moment.
Bad news travels fast.
Absolutely, certainly enjoying at the moment people telling us that we are doing it right.
Great. Excellent. Well, there you go. Vicky, what about you? You, aside from moonlighting as Vicky Stewart, Vicky Scott, whoever you are.
Yeah, I'm not moonlighting as Victoria Stewart.
No, you've also got your own business.
So I have a marketing consultancy. And there's no way in the world that I would even put myself as competing with Saatchi and Saatchi and Lohard Spink and Ogilvy and Mather, because it's a different ball game altogether. But the reality, of course, in my business is that most small to medium-sized businesses don't need that sort of degree of expertise. They do need help. They certainly don't have the budgets to pay for whole teams of people to create ads and to think up strategies, etc., etc. What they often need is direction, they need planning, they need some good ideas, and they need it at a price that they can afford. And those are really the things that I can do that small businesses can't do. You know, I can be hands-on.
Big businesses.
Sorry, whatever. Yeah, you know what I mean. I can be hands-on. I can work as required. I can work to a budget, and I can help them get better at doing it themselves, which is what most small businesses need. Most small businesses really do not need an advertising agency.
I think certainly in terms of my business, a sort of media content business, it's the more flexible you are, which you can be by being small, the more important. If you're dealing with a big client, then often the range of activities you'll be asked to do is narrower, because you're a small fish in a big pool there, and they only want you in for something very specialist. But the smaller the business gets, the more general your role can tend to be. But you just have to be sort of ready to sort of be flexible and all those things, and that flexibility that you have that even a slightly bigger business just doesn't have, I've found sort of stands us in very good stead.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? We're hearing more and more of these conversations about big business versus small business, and they can actually, to some respect, be on a level playing field. Last show we looked at the issue of globalisation and how the smallest of one-man bands can be trading globally now, with the fact that we can get online 24/7, access to social media, so you can get your message across the world. You can actually be trading at a level in terms of your ability to contact that any big organisation can. So thinking of taking your business global, Ian?
Well, you never know.
Have franchises all over the world.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you ever so much for to Ian and to Vicky Scott for being in the studio this evening. We're just going to take a very short break, and then we're just going to come back with our sort of diary items, and then it's the end of the show. It's all gone so quickly.
Join me, John Stevenson, every Friday afternoon on Friday Focus, where we interview politicians.
You're the Minister of State for Business Enterprise. One of your key responsibilities is to ensure enterprise has access to finance. So what are you doing to ensure they get it?
Entertainers.
We've managed to catch up with the legendary Buddy Greco.
That happens when you get old, you become legendary.
I've interviewed a lot of people, Toya. Where do I start with you? You're a rock star, you're an actress, you're a songwriter, you're an author, you're a TV presenter.
Well, I just like working.
We deal with disputes.
Said now that the money would come out of there if you wanted to do it.
Yes, of course. We welcome this. We'll take this strike off tomorrow if he guarantees us that he's going to carry out the survey. Of course.
He's just said they will.
Talk to the officers.
That's every Friday, 2 till 4.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
Dagnall Street Baptist Church has a welcoming, friendly atmosphere and can be found in the city centre. Regular Sunday services are held at 10:30am and 6:30pm. There are also weekday social meetings, special events and concerts. Our busy, relaxed coffee shop deserves a visit and is open 10 till 2 Monday to Saturday. Our website, www.dsbc.org.uk, has details of our regular programme and future events, plus the opportunity to download our monthly magazine. We also have a Facebook page where you can catch up on our latest news and chat.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
So we're at that section of the show where we talk about what's coming up, our diary items in the news. Roma, what have you got?
We've got a packed diary, but in fact, before we look at the diary, one of the things that's very exciting is that our listeners might like to know that we're running Lunchtime Verulam live links to the city centre with a new volunteer, Heley from Style in My City blog, interviewing local independent store owners about Christmas gifts. Our aims are to make great radio, get known by traders and support our local businesses. So far, we've had the pleasure of chatting to Alternative Barber Company, Lavender Blue, D Copperfield, Rainbows on Roses, Chloe James and The Dressing Room. So just to name a few. So listen out for that. In terms of events, just a reminder that this Tuesday, the 11th of December, the St Albans Chamber of Commerce have a festive evensong and networking evening starting at 5pm at St Albans Cathedral, followed by Tudor canapes and mulled wine at the White Hart Hotel. I think we put this in just because we like the sound of that.
I wonder what a Tudor canapé is.
I don't know.
Some sort of goose tongue on, lavender bread or something.
Well, I hope they're not as sort of old as the 15th century.
Oh, no, exactly. So that's along with festive music until 7:30pm. There'll be a raffle taking place for all attendees to win a festive hamper, and all donations from bookings will be made to the Cathedral Music Trust. If you want to book, it's all the W's at www.stalbanschamber.co.uk/buy online events.
Right, and given the spirit of the things we've been talking about with local delivery and produce and so on, it's important to say that shoppers are going to have extra opportunities to browse the city centre's market in the lead up to Christmas. Oh yes, we'll be there. The market will be held every day from Wednesday, December the 19th until Monday the 24th, sorry. Yes, Monday the 24th is not open on Christmas Day. God, these people never rest. A farmers market will also be held on Sunday, December the 9th. Well, that's gone already. That's gone, sorry.
Today.
And next Sunday, December the 16th, and a French market will be set up in Civic Close between Wednesday, December the 19th, and Saturday, December the 22nd. And this is something that Councillor Berwick Reid, who was one of our first guests, I think, our panel discussion is thoroughly approves of, and I think has been behind. Vicky, what do you have?
If you're still up for any more networking before Christmas, there's plenty going on with the 24/7 networking in Watford, Business Buzz, a whole drop-in coffee mornings in St Albans, Harpenden, and other places. And the Nuevo Business Women's Club are also holding events in Watford. For more information on any of these and other networking to keep your business thriving and getting a kickstart to January, you can go to www.findnetworkingevents.com-in-Hertfordshire.
Okay, and that's fantastic. I think that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. So we'll wrap it up tonight and say see you in 2 weeks, and thanks for listening to The Business.
You've been listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. If there's anything in the show you want to talk to us about, phone us on 01727.